This is the Lighting Fires podcast, supported by Henley Business School.
For me, I could see you were going to challenge me, but it was going to be an approach that I could basically accept, as opposed to not be told. It was going to be far more of a conversation, and we would basically go with the flow of actually where I needed support, because I've never had any business training. I'd never gone through a coaching program with an individual. Yeah, so I think that was kind of, for me, it was pivotal, because I have to connect with a person, because I probably at that time realised there were perhaps things going wrong that I needed to address. I needed to concentrate on myself, and it wasn't just about the business. This was actually me as a person. How could I improve as a person?
Welcome to the Lighting Fires podcast. My name is Julie Williams and I'm a coach. I have a master's in coaching and behavioural change, over 10 years of running my own coaching practice, and 15 years in marketing leadership roles, including Accenture, where I worked with Microsoft. In my work, I gain the benefit of walking with people through their lives for a short time. So on this podcast, you'll get to hear from people experiencing key moments of change in their business and personal lives. We'll hear what lit their fires and the techniques that created significant shifts. I hope you find their story inspiring. In this episode, we'll meet Pete Wharton, the Managing Director of Wharton, one of the leading natural infrastructure consultancies in the UK. Pete has recently been shortlisted for Professional Forester of the Year by the Institute of Chartered Foresters, where he supports young foresters working towards chartership. Pete and I first met in the lobby of a Hilton hotel on the outskirts of Oxford to see if we would have the right chemistry to embark on a coaching relationship. I'm pleased to say that went well. So what can you expect in this episode? We talk about taking risks as a business owner, the roller coaster of owning a business, the importance of reflecting back on our achievements and celebrating, plus goal setting and the pressure we can put ourselves under. I hope you enjoy this episode. So today I have Pete Wharton joining me. Pete, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, thanks so much for having me on this podcast, Julie. It's fantastic to come here and record this. So yeah, I'm Pete Wharton. I'm the director of Wharton Natural Infrastructure Consultants. We're an environmental consultancy specialising in arboriculture, biodiversity, net gain and ecology.
Thank you. So Pete, you and I did some coaching work together. I guess probably we started at the start of 2022, and we worked together for about a year, didn't we? So. Yeah, we worked together, and it was through a period of change for me as a person, but also for the business. I just needed somebody to come and speak to, and to kind of get a bit more clarity on where the business was going, but also as a person kind of improve my leadership skills, but also work out, well, where was I going wrong, or what could I improve on? So it was a really kind of fortuitous event, really. It felt like a very pivotal moment in your
massively so
business, working life, personal life. Yeah, so it was a very interesting kind of journey that we embarked on together.
Yeah.
I wonder if you could just tell us a bit about your backstory.
Yeah, so I've set the business up in 2008, 3 weeks before the recession at that point in time, which was a bit of a challenge, a bit of a risk, but I think every business owner takes a risk at some point. And going back even further than that, actually doing a lot of kind of like soul searching as to why I got into the industry, which is arboriculture, so studying of trees, being around nature. I actually have to go all the way back to being a little kid, climbing trees as a kid, falling out of trees, getting muddy. We didn't have PlayStations, we didn't have anything. I think it was the Spectrum at the time, and you didn't have a remote control for your TV. It was probably black and white for a certain part. And I lived in Ipswich at the time. And I went back there during COVID just to show my kids, basically, that this is where I grew up. And it was only at that point, so what age would I have been? 38, 39. And it suddenly triggered a massive emotional attachment for me, that for my whole childhood I've been surrounded by one park, which was Christchurch Park in the centre of Ipswich, and it's just littered with veteran trees. And we went there in autumn. There was autumn leaves all over the floor. It was spectacular. And that reflection really kind of triggered this emotional connection to, this is probably why I got into the industry I did, why I set up a business where I could be outside, where I could be connected with nature, where I was advising people of how they could be connected to nature. And actually, when we first met, I realised that most of my life was spent behind a desk. And so I'd gone from one extreme to the other. So the whole backstory is really that I wanted to be working in nature for the whole of my life, but through business growth, business development, I'd actually ended up where I didn't want to be, which was sat behind a desk, typing reports, or I suppose ultimately dealing with staff issues or HR issues very often. So that's kind of the backstory. I set the business up. It was just meant to be for myself and my wife and children. I had one at the time, so on that particular day when I decided to go into full-time self-employment, I had just remortgaged my house. My daughter was probably 6 months old. We'd moved house, so it was a fairly stressful time in lives. And then I suddenly decided it would be a good idea to go from basically part-time employment and self-employment to just full-time self-employment. And it's been a roller coaster of a ride. And anybody who tells you it's not a roller coaster of a ride, I think they're probably on a different level to me anyway. Yeah, so we decided in 2014 to employ our first person, and that kind of opened up my eyes to perhaps it could be more than just me, and actually perhaps if the business grew, then could we do other things as well? And we formulated a bit of a plan and then looked at it. So we bought ecology in-house and we started to develop that, and we now got a team of 12 of us now, and we're trying to continually expand now. We have shrunk the business down slightly, but we are now looking to kind of push forward with a new plan, and particularly as we are in an environmental crisis right now across, not in the country but across the world, and actually we want to have some impact, some positive change on that, and how people look at the environment and how they can introduce it into their everyday lives and get some benefit from it. So that's I suppose a potted history of where we've done, and we've just been through 15 years of the business, and I did do an actual potted history of the whole thing, and in terms of where the business started, where it went to, and actually where we want to go to next. Yeah, so it's exciting times.
Yeah, that sounds like a fascinating exercise in looking back and seeing where you've come from.
Yeah, and I think I don't know, I think most business owners are probably people who only look forward. We don't generally look back, and taking the time to sit there and reflect. I know in our coaching sessions we did a huge amount of reflection to get to some pretty difficult and challenging times. But those challenging times formulate who you are, and within that formulation you can kind of reflect on those and either take some massive positives from it, or you can look at the negatives of it as well and actually say, well, what did I do then? How can I change it, and how can I make sure it doesn't happen again? So I think it was something I'd never done, and perhaps you live in a bit of fear of what does it bring back to you that you don't want to even remember, or perhaps you've just forgotten about it completely and you just think, actually, let's just park that and move forward.
Yeah, I think you're right. A lot of entrepreneurs, business owners are very highly motivated, and they look forward all of the time, and they don't tend to pause and look back and realise where they've come from. But actually that is often part of the work that I do with my coaching clients is starting by looking back at what you've achieved already.
Yeah.
And I do find quite a lot of the people I work with that's quite a difficult exercise. I set people a bit of a task, either to do it with me or in their own time. And I remember asking you to look back at everything you've achieved so far in your life, and you put together kind of a visual document.
Yeah, you certainly did. It was, I'm a very visual person. I'm very it's hands-on. I'm not particularly good at reading or writing and those kind of things. So actually visualising these things, and actually you've helped me massively in that part of actually how I've gone ever since we first met. But yeah, I do remember that, because I think I concentrated on the negatives quite a lot, of perhaps what I hadn't quite achieved, as opposed to going back even further and saying, well, what did you achieve as a young person? What drove you to do those things? It's one specific moment in my life, and it was kind of that moment where you've got no inhibition, you are motivated by your own self. One of my highest achievements was playing the violin, which many people won't ever know. They look at me as not an outgoing lad, but I'm kind of fairly like full on when I need to be. When I play rugby, I do all these different sports, but from a fairly young age I played the violin until an accident happened, and it just meant I just gave it up. But it was this one moment in my life where I made a conscious decision I was going to do something, and I heard a piece of music which was Nigel Kennedy playing the Four Seasons, Vivaldi Four Seasons. I heard it from that minute when I was 6 years old, and I decided I wanted to play the violin. And it was that first moment of like, I'm going to make a choice here. I learned the violin until the point I could play this piece of music, and I could play it without any music, no any script in front of me. I could just go and play it. And that was probably the first time looking back where I really made a determined effort to do something, and that's probably instilled in everything I do now. I suppose the big thing that came out of it was I was looking for perfection, and I was looking for, right, I can play this, recite a piece of music which is however many minutes long, and play the whole thing, and then you put that into your adult life. And as a child you kind of just get on with it. As an adult you're kind of continually looking for perfection and continually looking for those things, and actually you might never get it. But that was probably my first childhood reflection of such a happy moment, and I always go back to it now. So that's kind of, I think, where that first kind of bit of determination came from.
That story's just giving me goosebumps, actually. Yeah, it's really powerful.
Playing music also highlighted a number of other things. So it was with another teacher when I'd moved up to the Midlands who recognised I can't keep a beat. I can't tap my foot, and I can't click in time, and that's how they realised I was dyslexic.
Really?
Yeah, so it's interesting, like the things you learn where you don't think you would do. So it's yeah, it opens up a whole bag of worms.
And I'm also recollecting some of the other achievements that, I mean, honestly, I remember looking at this piece of paper that I'd printed off, you'd sent to me, thinking, oh my goodness, this person has achieved so much and yet is so modest about these things. So I think you've done Ironman competitions. There's a lot of kind of athletic achievements. Yeah,
there was a bit of stuff. And I think, again, even in our journey, you took me to a place that I never thought I'd go back to, which was a real challenge for me. So I was known at primary school, I think they named me Sporty Warty. I wasn't the most athletic, I wasn't the most agile, but what I did do was put 100% into it, and I would give it my very best shot to do anything and do it to the best of my ability. But that also came at a cost, because I become quite focused on certain things, and I did that as a teenager, but that kind of focus was going the wrong way. So I was playing rugby a lot, but I was also, as we do, I got into alcohol, I got into those kind of the things that I shouldn't have been doing. And I moved away from home at the age of 18, and at that point just went into like a bit of a spiral of decline. I think you would look at it now. I nearly gave up university. I got massively overweight. I think I probably topped out on the scales at about 18 stone, which some people won't ever believe. But
I find that really hard
there's a picture of me, and I just look like a darts player. I've got a big Hawaiian shirt on. I'm completely bald head. And it was a real troublesome time for me. But I also made a decision, because I could realise I wasn't going to be able to fulfil my dream of climbing trees basically at that point all of my life, because I was just too overweight. I couldn't haul myself around a canopy of a tree. It was really bad. So I lost, I went down from 18 stone down to about 11 stone very quickly, and that was just through like exercise and just determination, actually improving my life, cutting out the alcohol. But probably, as with every business owner and every person who's determined, you want the next challenge. So then we had our first child, Millie, and I was still playing rugby at this point in time, but I knew the body was kind of saying at some point you've got to give up rugby, but I needed something else to drive me forward, and sport was one of those things that did it for me. It was in 2013 I just decided I was going to go and run a marathon, and it was to raise money, and all these things that I do have always been to try and do something else with it. So Jen and me had a miscarriage. It had been on Christmas Day. It had been a pretty awful experience for us. But I made it my specific mission that one thing that wasn't talked about at that time was how men deal with it. And it's one of these taboo subjects for obvious reasons. Nobody wants to talk about these things. But if we don't talk about it, how can we improve the situation? And I'd never realised at that time how many people go through this process. And we weren't very far into the pregnancy, but it still hurt. It still hurts Jen continually. So I thought, right, I'm going to go and run a marathon, but the challenge is I'm going to run it and I'm going to raise money for the Miscarriage Association, which is a small association, charity. So I did that, and it was Herbie was born. So between the two pregnancies, we'd had the miscarriage, and then Herbie was born, and it was in that year that I went in. So he was born in the November. In the April, I ran the marathon. But I also decided, right, I've got to raise as much money as possible and awareness. So I was basically one of their ambassadors and was for quite a while. So I ran the marathon. But again, it's one of those things. You run a marathon, I set myself a goal. I set myself this goal, 4 hours around London Marathon. Never run that distance before. And I was running and running and running. And I was on time. Everything was going well. I got over the line and it said 4 hours, 7 minutes. And I was like, why has that happened? What happened there? I was with the 3 hours 50. At one point I was with the 3 hours 30 people. I then realised that the balloons at that time, they weren't big flags as they are now, the guy had actually got injured. So I was following what I thought the person was. So I went from jubilation within 30 seconds of crossing the line to sheer frustration, and I was upset. I was really, really basically peed off with myself that I'd done all this training and I hadn't achieved the goal. So I went back the following year, did it in 3 hours 57. So that was okay. It was fine. I'd achieved the goal that I wanted to achieve, but actually it sparked something else in my head, and that was the drive to go and do something else. And I think, yeah, if you probably spoke to Jen now, she'd be like, this was a disaster. What else can he do? So I think I did 3 or 4 marathons at that point, and but then it was the next thing. And I live in extremes, as I've spoken about already. I live in extremes of weight gain, weight loss, sporting achievement, not achieving, violin achieving, not achieving. So I decided to sign up for an Ironman race. Which seemed like a great idea at the time.
I was just thinking about, all these incredible accomplishments. So that first marathon was still an incredible achievement. It may not have been the
it was okay
time,
yeah.
But actually, it was still a huge thing.
Yeah.
And I'm just thinking about how sometimes we can't internalise our accomplishments. We can't take them in and bask in them or acknowledge them.
No, I would completely agree with that. And I think some people some people can and some people can't. And perhaps at that time for me personally, I wasn't in a place where I could do, because I just saw it as a bit of a failure. And it didn't, you kind of go back to the reason why I did it for the charity. And actually what I did for the charity and what I did for the rugby team, for example. The rugby team is a bunch of lads. We have a bit of a laugh, have a few drinks. We don't talk that much about specific things, but what it made me realise was there was one lad in particular. I remember the night I was sat in a hotel the night before, and I'd raised all the money I needed to. There was no problems, and suddenly I got a massive donation through, and I was just like, "Where's this come from?" And I read where it come from and the message he put, and I was in bits, because we hadn't really talked about it. But he said, I've spoken now, you've spoken up about this, I can now accept what I went through. And I think he'd had 5 or 6 miscarriages.
Gosh.
And for him to open up like that, I was just like, wow, that's the power of what I've done, is that I've got these people speaking, and we're best mates. I now coach his lad in rugby. And I have full respect for the chap. He's brilliant. But it was that kind of thing that you just don't when you're in the moment, you forget about that kind of thing. But when you reflect on these things, they're the power. That's the power that you've done. So I think I completely agree. We don't reflect enough or look, probably, and Jen would say this about me, you become tunnel vision, completely focused on something. You completely remove your way around the periphery and the impact you can have on those things. So it's important stuff, I think, that we perhaps forget, or I certainly do.
Yeah, that's very moving, actually. And it shows, I think, how that ability to have the tunnel vision serves you really well in lots of ways. But it also has the occasional downside.
It can have a massive downside, yeah. So I think it's getting the balance, isn't it? I think with all these things, and actually probably as humans, particularly as like young people, we've got to learn these things. They're not things that are, it's a bit like running a business. We're not told how to do X, Y and Z. There is no definitive path of how you do it. So you have to formulate your own way of doing these things. But I think that reflection piece that you took me to, and you were probably the first person to do that with me, gave me the ability to now look far wider and actually make a conscious effort to say, well, if I do X, Y and Z, what's the impact, and what if I don't do it, what's the impact? If I do it, what's the impact? And have I considered everything? So I think that's vitally important for me.
Yeah, so a bit of a shift in perspective. If you're listening to this and you're interested in training as a coach, I can highly recommend the Professional Certificate in Executive Coaching, or even the Masters at Henley Business School. It is the best investment I have made in myself and my business. The course is led by research, so you know it has academic rigour, and the tools and techniques you learn are highly practical. You get the opportunities to practice, you build confidence. I also gained friendships for life, a community that's continued to support me. I can highly recommend it. So if you decide to take the plunge and contact Henley about the certificate programme, do mention the Lighting Fires podcast. So going back to when we started the coaching.
Yep.
So what were you hoping to get out of it? You're obviously at a pivotal moment in business and in your working life and your personal life. So what were you hoping for?
Yeah, so I'd had coaching beforehand, and it was very formulaic. It was very much, this is the process you're going to follow, and it was all about business growth. It was about, you follow this specific task and like you're held accountable to that, which for me as a person, like being told what to do, I haven't always struggled with it, but it's not something I particularly enjoy. And I'd spoken to a few people, and one person was kept on coming into conversation, which was yourself. So I think we met it was in a hotel with Jen, just to see if we were going to click, and that was at the start of January in 2022. And actually, for me, I could see you were going to challenge me, but it was going to be an approach that I could basically accept, as opposed to not be told. It was going to be far more of a conversation, and we would basically go with the flow of actually where I needed support, because I've never had any business training. I'd never gone through a coaching program with an individual. Yeah, so I think that was kind of, for me, it was pivotal, because I have to connect with the person, because I probably at that time realised there were perhaps things going wrong that I needed to address. But actually, I think what our coaching did, and this is probably where the previous coaching hadn't done, I needed to concentrate on myself. And it wasn't just about the business. This was actually me as a person. How could I improve as a person? Because we were going through a time of change in the business. We'd grown rapidly through COVID. And I think COVID had some good impact, but it had also some massively negative impact as well.
Yeah, because I remember quite a lot of people had left the business, hadn't they, for lots of different reasons through COVID. So you were at quite a different place.
Yeah, I think I was at one of those living in extremes at a very low pace, and a place where I needed to do some soul searching of, is this me or is this just people making different decisions? And actually I can't control those decisions. And perhaps there's an element of control as well there that you look at and you think, I want to be in control of a situation, but I'm not in control of a situation, and I needed a support network around me which was completely external from the business, to understand, right, okay, if we go in this direction, what will happen? If we don't do this, what will happen? And I think you realised fairly quickly with me that I'm quite a visual person. I prefer to visualise things, and we did Myers-Briggs, and I remember getting this, like, I don't know, is it like a 15-page report of my personality profile? And I remember you sent me an email and you said, is this you? And it was a visual diagram of how you deal with stress. And it was somebody sat there in your calm state, you're working away. As stress and people and anxiety builds up, you were doing more and more stuff. But actually what it also turned into was you were going out more and more and more and more, and that was your coping mechanism. And that's exactly what I was doing. And I remember it just hit me like a 10-ton rock, basically, that this is what I'm doing, and actually there's no getting me back at that point. So I have to therefore take a really conscious look at things and say, you've got to stop that. So it was pivotal in what I was doing. I think it was probably pivotal for Jen and me as well. Yeah, and I think every session we were going through and we were trying to visualise, right, what did I want the company to look like, and who were those key people within it. And then it seemed to be, it was like a continual thing with us. I think there was always something had gone wrong. and at that point, because it was happening so frequently, we were kind of like, how do we get some positives out of this? And that was a real challenge, actually, because you become very low in yourself. But yeah, we talked things through, we visualised. I remember one session we did where we were visualising, you bought a box of basically figures and characters, and we were basically designing the team around these characters, and I had to go through and say, right, well, why was this, but why did you use that person to represent you? And it was phenomenal. And I remember that was quite a pivotal moment for me, because we could define a team, but I could also see, it also highlighted a few other things, which was the business wasn't going in the direction I wanted it to go in. I'd taken too much of a step back, and I wasn't accepting the standard I wanted in the business. I was accepting that people were doing things almost to their own accord and not quite how I would accept them or expect them to do it. And it was just a challenge, but confronting that challenge was quite difficult at that time, because I probably wasn't in the right mindset. So your expertise was very much around almost counselling me and helping me through things, as well as trying to sort out the business as well.
Yeah, it was interesting, because I remember when we talked about what you wanted to achieve from the coaching, there was obviously, we were talking about business growth and developing the business, but there was also very much your own personal development at the heart of this. And we kind of moved between those two topics a lot, but we probably spent more time on you and the personal development. And as a coach, this journey of working with you was very significant. It felt like I really wanted to support you. I mean, I always feel like that with all my clients, but I felt a real sense of responsibility that this was such a pivotal time for you. And as coaches, we're required to have something called professional coaching supervision, which is where we either take our coaching scenarios and clients in an anonymised way. We talk to our peers or people with more experience, and this helps us to maintain our ethical and professional practice. And I did take our work a couple of times to different supervision groups, because I felt that sense of responsibility, and with that came quite a lot of emotional work on my part too, I think. Right. Which it doesn't always happen. I mean, I think I tend to take on people's stuff a little bit and emotions. I mean, some coaches are kind of better at probably water off a duck's back, but that's I think because it's the nature of the working relationships that I have with my clients. Maybe it's a bit different for me. But I remember wanting a bit of support so that I could support you. Yeah. Because I think we probably went up to the boundaries of counselling sometimes. I don't think we got into that space, which was really important that we didn't. Yeah, that's definitely not what coaching is about. But I think we were definitely kind of at times...
we were on the fringes of things. And I don't think, because of the visualisation part of it and the going back to where certain things were driven from, and I think that's something I'd never done, because one of the things that came out of Myers-Briggs was this perfectionist kind of thing. Where's that come from? And actually that's quite a difficult thing to go through, and nothing I'd ever done before, so whoever had brought that out of me was probably going to need some help as well.
And I'm just thinking about there's a neuro-linguistic programming technique called backtracking beliefs, which I think we used, which is where you you're backtracking, you're going back in your mind to at what point a belief started, not with a desire to delve into that in a way that would be therapeutic and counselling, but in order for you to look at that belief and see what you thought before you believed that. Yeah. Because sometimes we develop a belief at a point in our lives which we then take with us, and actually it might not be true at all, and it might not be serving us very well. So, but that work is quite challenging. It's
challenging. It's something you don't do in your day-to-day life, and I think it was vitally important for me. It was, for me personally, it was so important to get to that point, because I think it was probably something that was holding me back, not only in day-to-day life, but it was holding me back certainly in business. So I think that the discussions we had, they were very meaningful, but they were also really important at that point in my life to overcome perhaps some of the fears that were holding me back, but also to start to challenge things a bit differently, and turn things around. So.
I'm just thinking, with a lighter moment in mind, there was a very funny...
I know where this is going.
So we used to meet at the Malmaison in Oxford, which I have to say they were very generous in allowing us to kind of meet in their restaurant. And I guess the first thing I remember is we were looking at a kind of exercise of thinking about where you wanted to take the business. And because all the breakfast customers had emptied out, the restaurant was empty. We would often they have a small private dining room in the Malmaison, just off the main restaurant, and it's a kind of circular room, obviously had been part of the prison, and there was this kind of circular table, and we would sit there, and very quiet because the walls were very thick, and then high up on the wall there was a tiny window with some metal barriers. So we had probably spent about an hour in there at that point,
probably
maybe a bit longer, and we got up to leave, and I went to open the door, and was it that it came off in my hand?
It was either, or just what, I don't think the handle was there.
Yeah,
there just was no handle.
Yeah. And I think at first we just thought it was quite funny.
Yeah.
And then we remembered that nobody was actually in the remain So I think we did a little bit of banging on the door, but there was a real tangible sense of panic, but I wanted to remain professional. And I was just trying to think, how are we going to get out of here? Because the minutes started going by.
Nobody could hear us at that point, and there's no window because it's an old prison. There's no windows or anything, so nobody could even see into the room, I don't think.
Yeah. But by some absolute miracle, you had the exact tools that you needed in your backpack.
I think that's called being an outdoor person. At that time, probably a scout or a cub leader, and so out came the trusty Leatherman. And lo and behold, it's the most useful it's ever been, because we managed to, I think, basically clamp onto the little turny thing in the door and actually managed to get out, didn't we? It's something I do recall to quite a few people, actually. Whenever the Leatherman comes out, I have a little wry smile on my face, because it's been used to actually escape something. So if anybody ever needs to escape prison, keep Leatherman on you.
So that is definitely a very strong memory of our work together, and I wonder what it symbolises.
I think it's perhaps being equipped for what you've got in hand or ahead of you, perhaps.
And being resourceful. Are you feeling stuck and need some help moving forwards? At Lighting Fires, I work with business leaders, future leaders and their teams to ignite their full leadership potential. Whether you're a business owner or leading in an organisation, we can work together to create a programme tailored to your priorities. Throughout our coaching together, I see my clients' confidence and capabilities grow as they gain a greater understanding of how they work, learn to make quicker decisions, and develop a vision for their role and a plan on how to get there. Through the challenges and the breakthroughs, you'll have me by your side. Get in touch on LinkedIn or email me, julie@lightingfires.co.uk. I'm just thinking about our coaching work. Are there any other moments of change or something shifted for you?
I got clarity of thought on certain things in terms of the direction of the business, but also perhaps going, rather than continually pushing and pushing and pushing, which I have a tendency to do, I think because I set my own standards fairly high, but I have a bar that can never be obtained. But I kept on, without realising it, setting a bar. We'd achieve it. We would never celebrate it. We would never look back on it. And it was reflecting on the negatives a lot of the time, but not allowing the team to celebrate. And now we actually plan things. We plan things to celebrate. And that was pretty pivotal for me because it wasn't something that I'd done. And I think probably because I was scared that if I hadn't achieved everything, then I'd failed. And I lived in this failure. So that was one of my massive takeaways from everything, was living more present. Don't just continually look for the next thing. Don't move the bar. Don't continually, like, if you've got a goal that you're going for, well, hit the goal. You don't need to go massively beyond it, or you've set the goal because that's what you want to achieve. You definitely achieve beyond, up above it. So that was a big turning point for me. But also, I think going back to why I set the business up, I believe in kind of being fair with people. It's something that I was raised with as a Quaker, that people should have opportunity and there should be an emphasis on fairness. But also, I think I'd also forgotten that I was the director of the company. And actually, I have to firstly stand up and be counted. But secondly, I'm allowed an opinion. And I was being battered down at that point, that my opinion virtually didn't count. And I was almost accepting that. So it was really opened my eyes to those things, that actually, don't, I suppose, go away from your own values and beliefs and all those things, but you also you're going to have difficult conversations. You're going to have these other elements within work life where things might not work out, but don't let it just like completely dictate where you're going. So it got me out of some major holes and just gave me better clarity of thought. Actually, you can have some fun. You still got to do your work, but actually you can still get that done, and you don't mind putting the extra effort in because it was fun. And I think I'd lost that through COVID.
Gosh, and fun is so important at work. I know people cringe a bit when we talk about having fun at work, but I look back at my career, and some of the funniest moments, the most enjoyable moments, have been with work colleagues in all sorts of situations. Yeah. Often because you're with people who you might not pick to be your friends, but you get to know really different, diverse personalities and get thrown into situations you don't expect.
Yeah, and I think they all have a really insightful opinion as well, and things that you might not hear otherwise. And even this week we've had a new lady start in our team, and it's the first time in probably 4 years that I've spent a week with a brand new person coming out as a graduate, gone into the field with them. We've surveyed some sites. We've spent way too much time on these sites, but it's been the best week because actually I've been learning loads, but she's also been kind of like asking so many questions, and you forget actually that's what you studied. And actually, that's why you got into it. I didn't get into it to manage tons of people. I got into it because I like looking at nature and actually understanding that. And that's where the level of expertise is. Yeah, so it all comes around full circle, I think. But it goes back to the team, and actually having that right team around you that you can actually say, I can trust you to do that. We can go in this direction. We're all on the same bus together without people pulling in other directions, and that's vital.
Yeah, I mean, having the right people around you, and sometimes that does require really difficult decisions and situations to get you to that point, but it then means that you can relax and you know you've got people who are expert and you trust.
Yeah, and I think actually it showed this last week. So I've been away for a week, and it was the first time I've gone on holiday in 15 years. But I remember leaving the office on the Friday evening and thinking, actually, I can go away. These guys have got it. There's not going to be a drama. There's not going to be any issues.
Well, that had come up in our coaching, hadn't it? I remember talking about how you felt like you couldn't go away and not take your laptop with you because things often did crop up or go a bit wrong. So this is fantastic.
It's great, and those little days when you're on holiday with the family, and I remember like my lad Herbie having a bit of a go at me, sat on a chairlift, and I'm emailing people, and you're not present in the moment. You're like 3,000 metres or 3,000 feet in the air on the top of a mountain looking over the world, and you're looking at your phone, and actually it goes back to being present in that moment, which was really important.
Okay, so at this point in the interview, I'm going to ask you to pick a random question out of my little bowl.
The bowl. Okay, let's go with that one.
See what you come up with.
Oh, okay. So, biggest success, and what, if you break it down, contributed to this? That's quite a challenging one, because you can look at it in different ways. Like, the biggest success probably has to be having a family. That's a fairly big success, but I suppose that's a fairly standard thing. Biggest individual success is probably turning my life around from the age of 18, and it took 20 years almost to realise it. So nearly leaving university, all those kind of things. The reason why it was a 20-year success is because I hadn't realised that how much impact that had on my life, and to put a stop on it, to say I've done something. To do that Ironman race, but that was the culmination of training, but also the mental strength to say, look, I'm going to go and do this. And I suppose it goes back to that whole thing of like living life at extremes. So yes, those challenges. So the success is really kind of reflecting on why you did it. So yes, I think that was probably the biggest success.
It sounds like an incredible success. What would your advice be to somebody who's in a similar situation?
Speak to people. Speak to the right people. I think it's one of these things, you kind of surround yourself with with friends and the close people. Don't be scared to speak out about it. It's interesting that I wasn't scared to speak out about miscarriage. I'm not bothered about speaking to anybody about being overweight or drinking too much or going into these crazy sports, and I'll happily help people do that. But the one thing I'd never spoke out about was mental health, because I'd never probably wanted to address it, never really taken a deep look at myself. So having people around you, and it's something I've discussed within our industry as well, is actually there's a lot of sole traders out there who will be under a lot of pressure, particularly like right now, like cost of living goes up, all these different things go up, and actually perhaps people aren't directors, they haven't got the people around them to be able to speak to. So actually, why don't you have a group just where it's kind of everything stays in that room, and actually, but you can have a chat about it, because once you've spoken to one person about it, you generally find that other people have been through it, and I've certainly found that, particularly in the last 12 or 18 months.
It's amazing, isn't it? Once you pluck up the courage to tell one person what you're going through, so often they say, oh yeah, that happened to me.
Yeah.
Well, I experienced that, or that happened to somebody really close to me. And I mean, that happened to me really recently, where I was really shy to tell people about something that I was going through, and then I just discovered that nearly everybody I spoke to had been through exactly the same thing. I was like, oh, okay. But there's still so many taboos out there that we need to keep breaking, don't we? Yeah,
and I think it helps everybody around you as well if they see that there isn't just like a face that just never breaks. So I think it's quite a bit of vulnerability.
I think being able to role model vulnerability is really important. Yeah. I agree. I was just reflecting before we started our conversation today on, at one point in the coaching, I asked what could have been better in terms of the coaching. And I think one of the things you mentioned was that perhaps I could have held you to account a bit more often. So it's an interesting, accountability is an interesting one. I'm somebody who can get sidetracked fairly easily on things, even as you found on having this chat today. And perhaps I didn't realise that at the time, but I think the accountability to say, right, okay, you haven't done something, why haven't you done it, is, I find, quite a strong thing for me, and that probably comes from sporting, kind of like coaching, like whether it be rugby coaching and things, but it was always immediate, and particularly when we were talking about
perhaps some of those subjects I didn't want to talk about all the time. That was it. Yeah, it was. I think the accountability is vital for some people.
I think it is, and I remember looking back thinking sometimes he hasn't done some of the things he said he was going to do, but also often other really pressing things were coming up into the conversation, and maybe I allowed myself to be distracted a little bit.
Yeah, I don't know. If you ask my team, where do I do everything 100? No. And it's a continual thing that comes up in my life. I think Lou actually put it to me really well the other day. She said, you get to 80 or 90% there, Pete, but don't quite get that 100%. And I was like, yeah, you're right. Yeah, that's where you need people around you to kind of help you.
Yeah. So I think that's a good learning for me, is to push a little bit more sometimes. I think that would be useful learning. So, Pete, thank you. I've thoroughly enjoyed this. I think we've been around the houses on many topics.
Yeah, I have.
All really interesting and really relevant to leaders and business owners. So perhaps I could ask that you might come back another time and we could do a coaching session. Yeah,
definitely. I'd love to do that. And thank you for all that. You've, very often in our coaching sessions, you were ears and you were a set of, just advisory person to me, and really helped me kind of just unpick and unravel things. And I think that's sometimes what business leaders need, is just somebody who they can turn to. And even now we have telephone conversations and things like that, and I come away from them just thinking I've learnt a lot, but also somebody's just there who's kind of listened. And I think that's sometimes we feel very alone, and actually that's quite a lonely place. So yeah, and it's been wonderful. So thank you for everything you've done for me.
Pleasure. Thank you very much. As I reflect back on the interview with Pete, I'm really struck by the depth of the coaching work and the coaching relationship here. It was a really deeply trusting relationship, which I really valued. But not all coaching work is like that, and that's fine. My top tips for this episode. The first is take a look at your sense of purpose. Ask yourself what really connects you to your passion in your role or your business. Pete talked about revisiting Christchurch Park in Ipswich in the east of England. He saw all the old trees from his childhood and rediscovered his emotional connection to nature. This moved him on to the next successful phase for his business. Many of you will be familiar with the work of Simon Sinek, either through his TED Talks or books, including Finding Your Why. I can highly recommend this for clarifying your own purpose, but also that of your team or your brand. My second top tip is try mapping out a history of your life and business achievements. Focus on the highs, noticing what has been inspiring for you over the years, and what do the highs have in common. I recently revisited this exercise for myself and noticed that I need to be learning and around inspiring people at the moments when I achieve the most. If you'd like to find out how we could work together, you can visit my website www.lightingfires.co.uk, email me at julie@lightingfires.co.uk, or contact me on LinkedIn, Julie Williams, MSc. If you found this podcast helpful, please leave a 5-star rating so others just like you can find me and benefit from these stories. Thank you for listening to the Lighting Fires podcast. I'll be back soon with more conversations with my wonderful clients reflecting on their coaching journeys.